Eduardo, I'm doing extraordinarily well.
Well, good evening. We're very pleased to have you all here for this dinner, and we're very fortunate, I think, to have a great speaker this evening. We also have Mike Coates, the director of the Johnson Space Center, here with us, and I'm going to turn it over to Mike, and he's going to introduce our speaker. Mike?
Thank you, George. I have the great privilege tonight of introducing our keynote speaker, NASA Administrator Charlie Bolden. And Charlie asked me to keep his introduction short and just talk about his grandchildren. After thinking about it a lot, I realized I don't know how to talk about grandchildren and keep it short. So sorry, Charlie. Bear with me. Charlie's resume is impressive by any measure. Naval aviator, combat pilot with more than 100 missions in Southeast Asia during the Vietnam War, test pilot, astronaut, and veteran of 4 space shuttle missions, including 2 as the space shuttle commander. One of Charlie's missions was to deploy the Hubble Space Telescope, and another was the first U.S.-Russian shuttle mission with the first cosmonaut to fly on a shuttle crew. His many awards include the Distinguished Flying Cross and the Distinguished Service Medal. After 14 years as an astronaut, he returned to the U.S. Marine Corps and rose to the rank of Major General. Impressive indeed, but if you ask Charlie what he's proudest of, he will start talking about his family. In a couple of weeks, Charlie and Jackie will celebrate 42 years of marriage. Good thing I reminded you, right, Charlie? I'm there for you, buddy. Their son, Che, is a lieutenant colonel in the United States Marine Corps, and their daughter, Kelly, is a medical doctor currently on a plastic surgery fellowship. I need to get to know Kelly really well. And they have 3 adorable granddaughters who also adore their grandfather. Charlie is a member of the finest class ever to graduate from the U.S. Naval Academy. And also a member of the second finest astronaut class ever to be selected. Just stating facts here, Charlie. In all seriousness, Charlie is exactly the right person in the right job during a time of major change at NASA. And I am proud to introduce the 12th Administrator of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, Major General Charles F. Bolden. Let me point out, Charlie has agreed to a question and answer session. We'll have microphones, so afterwards, if you just hold up your hands, we'll have microphones come around.
Thanks, Charlie. Thank you. Thanks very much. It's always a pleasure to be here for the International Space Medicine Summit, and I don't know how many of you who have ever worked for Dr. Alford. I have. And I will say a number of things. He is an incredible taskmaster, but he is a perfectionist in every respect, and he is an incredibly talented person to work for. And it has been my privilege to serve on the board of NSBRI prior to leaving to go up to Washington, and I look forward to coming back, and hopefully you'll invite me to come back if I haven't screwed things up too badly. I actually was going to talk a little bit tonight about NASA's international involvement, and after listening to the presentations today, I decided that would really be a waste of time. And so what I want to do is I want to make just some very brief remarks, and what I will do is try to share with this group what's different about our budget, if you will, because everybody talks about NASA's budget. But I will talk about what's different today, and it will change over time, but it is different today from what it was on the 1st of February when I initially announced it. So I thought I would share that with you and tell you why I think it's really exciting and important, and then just kind of open the floor for questions, because you probably have questions about things that I would never get to if I did it. And I will encourage you. I know that there are at least two people in here who will not be bashful. I won't call their names, Walt and Dot. But I hope there's no one else in here who will be bashful about asking questions, and I will try to take them, for a little while anyway. I won't keep you from your dinner. But I think that would be more useful than me getting up here and pontificating. But let me try to go through what happened when the president went to the Kennedy Space Center in Washington, in the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. He actually went down and had a meeting with a small group of people, and they were pretty diverse, both in their opinion of the budget and in their support or non-support of space exploration. One of the things that all of us in this room probably don't realize, some of us do, we're rabid when it comes to our love of space and space exploration. Everybody doesn't share our rabidness. And I find that hard to believe, but there are other people, and some of them are in influential places, who really don't share our love of exploration and our love of space. And it has been an interesting education for me, having been in Washington for these 10 months, my second time there, but to find out some of the reasons that people don't share our love of space. And most of them have to do with there are finite funds, and there are far more important things than space to spend those funds on. Or if there's an English teacher here, on which to spend those funds. Okay, Barbara? Got it. And as harsh as that may be, or as hard as that may be for us to understand, and I tell you that because it'll help set the stage for why what the president is trying to do is so difficult, and why it's so difficult, as most of you who have ever served in Washington will know, to get anything done. But I will try. When the president went to the Cape, he mentioned several things that were a little bit different than what was in the letter of the budget as I announced it on the 1st of February. The first thing was restructuring the Orion program, or the Orion project in the Constellation program, such that we would, and I'm going to tell you, I'm going to try to be candid tonight, okay? So if there's somebody from the press here, you'll probably get me fired tomorrow, like Mike and my other classmate, Denny Blair. But anyway. The words that the president used was restructure Orion to be a crew rescue vehicle, which is problematic for me and for all of us. It means, I keep trying to explain to people that when you say things that deal with engineering and science and stuff, they have very definite meanings, and it's not nebulous. So when you say a crew rescue vehicle, then people take that to mean something very specific. And they take it to mean something that has a very finite life, because we all know that, we really don't need a crew rescue vehicle. We have probably the best one in the world right now in the form of the Soyuz, and it has been our means of getting into and back from space almost from the beginning of the International Space Station program. And I realized that was not its original intent. I thought, and I've been re-educated, I thought that the original agreement was that the Russians would always provide transportation for people, and we would take cargo. And somebody corrected me and said, well, that wasn't always the intent, but it just kind of worked out that way. But it has been an incredible vehicle for us to get to and from space for the 10 years of the International Space Station program. And as we go on into 2020 and beyond, as some of us hope, it will probably be one of the vehicles, the principal vehicle for getting crews, NASA crews, and crews that are involved in the professional type of activities that we do. It will probably be the principal vehicle for getting people there. And the other vehicle for getting people there, hopefully, will be something that we will call a commercial vehicle. Now, let me define commercial, because it causes a lot of angst. Shuttle is a commercial vehicle. Atlas is a commercial vehicle. Delta is a commercial vehicle. We generally buy them, though. So the acquisition strategy for the vehicles, the commercial vehicles that we use today, is a little bit different from what I would like to do in the future, because I don't want to have to buy a vehicle and maintain it and operate it just to go to the International Space Station or to go to low Earth orbit, because I think most of you in this room, as I have heard you say all day today in every panel, is that where everything that we do is trying to prepare us to send humans much beyond low Earth orbit. In every panel I heard today, we talked about Mars as the destination, but the difficulty that we all realize we're going to have in getting there. And so there are technologies that we need, there are understandings of our sciences and that we need to do better. And in order to do that, we, NASA, need to work with our partners, international partners, industry partners, but most especially, I think, academia. We need to bring them back into the mix. And the only way we can do that is by giving them money for research and development, and by giving them money to produce graduate students who will want to do the kinds of things that we need to do, graduate students who will want to study technology. And what we have done, because the president says it's okay for me to do it, is although we don't have any money yet because we don't have a 2011 budget, and I get beat up by Congress because I'm doing this, we have sent letters out to industry saying we want to fund 500 graduate students, fully fund 500 graduate students for a 2-year graduate degree in technology, but we want to make sure that we know that we're doing it in the right areas. So what is it that you think you're going to need? What subject areas do you think we should be funding graduate students for? And then once we get that back, when the budget is approved, then we'll be able to put money on the college campuses and say, okay, you go out and get them, but this is what we want them to study. And so we will produce master's degree students and hopefully some doctoral students who will be the first wave of the new generation of technologists and engineers and scientists, because all of us are going to go away. I know that's hard for you to believe, as young as you happen to be. But this is a long road. You know, somebody talked, Leroy, I don't know whether it was you or somebody else talked about the difference between shuttle and station operations earlier today, you know, the sprint and the marathon. We are involved in a marathon. When you talk about going to Mars, that's a long way away. You know, conservatively, it's 2030 when the first vehicle with a human in it goes to, if it orbits the planet or goes to a Martian moon or does something, it's still 2030. And I can't do any better than that, and I defy anybody sitting at any table in here to do any better than that, because there are certain things we just don't have, that we're not capable of ethically putting a human being in a vehicle and sending them there now. So the president told me, I want you to develop, restructure the Orion spacecraft. We're working on trying to get the language right so that Orion becomes the technological foundation for whatever the deep space vehicle is going to be to take humans into Martian orbit or orbit of the moon or whatever. He has also said that you better come to me before 2015 and tell me what kind of heavy lift launch vehicle you want to do that. And it's important to understand that he said prior to, before, no later than 2015. Now that has put even the president at odds with some people, because, as all of you who have been around Washington know, the later you can make a decision, the better it is, because you don't have to spend any money. Okay? And he understands that, and we all understand that. So he has said no later than 2015, please tell me what the architecture is that you're going to use to get to the moon. And he didn't say, bring it to me and let me approve it. He said, tell me what it is. So he has told us to tell him what's the best way, what is the best heavy lift vehicle that will get us into deep space. He has also said, I want you to spend some money developing the technologies that are going to make this possible, developing the capabilities and the technological advances that you need to make this possible. And you have got to facilitate the success of the commercial industry to gain access to low Earth orbit and make that operation. And that is the bone of contention for most people. It's two things. One is termination of constellation, which many of you in this room have devoted a significant portion of your life to be quite honest. And it's the introduction of quote-unquote commercial entities to get us to low Earth orbit. But it's the right thing to do. And it's as hard as it is to accept that, it really is going to free us up to go and build the proper vehicles to get humans much beyond low Earth orbit and on to Mars and asteroids and things. And some people may say, no one in this room will, but I get asked by members of Congress, why do we want to go to an asteroid? And you know, you try to explain, okay, there are things that can hurt us. We call them NEOs, near-Earth objects. A lot of them are asteroids, and they can hurt us pretty bad. And we show them the image from the Hubble Space Telescope of Jupiter that was taken late last year with this little black spot on it. Has everybody seen this, the one that I'm talking about? You know, the little black spot where, I forget what comet it was, but pieces of it plunged into Jupiter and it left a little black spot. Well, that little black spot is several Earths in diameter. Several Earths in diameter. And that stuff's coming at us all the time. And by the Space Act of 1998, I just learned after becoming the NASA administrator, I am supposed to, by 2020, identify 90% of those objects that are going around the sun and can threaten Earth, and we are supposed to characterize them. Well, now, you know what characterize means? Tell me whether it's sand, or tell me whether it's iron, or tell me whether it can hurt Earth, or whether I shouldn't worry about it. We can't do that right now. We don't have the technology to do it. We can do a lot of it, and we have done quite a bit of it. But we will do more as we develop the in-space resources, the in-space sensors that can help us determine what these objects are. We have an incredible instrument right now that was launched end of the year called WISE. It's an infrared imaging telescope that's out, and it's imaging the universe as we see it today. And it has already identified several hundred asteroids that are potentials for us. But I just say potential. So those are some of the things that the President has said do. He has also said, by 2020, I want to be able to launch something like a circumlunar mission. Walt is very familiar with Apollo 8. You know, that we went around the moon. That was its only purpose, was just to go around the moon, demonstrate we could do that, and that's where the Earthrise came from, if for those of you who remember that. That's what we want to do by 2020. By 2025, we want to be able to send humans with robots to at least rendezvous with an asteroid, to demonstrate, one, that we can do it, because that's hard. That is really, really difficult. I'm not a rocket scientist. Mike Coates will tell you, because he told me, it's hard. Because asteroids, they're not like things orbiting Earth. You know, we know about things orbiting Earth because they have very defined values of their period and their orbital inclination and all that other stuff. Asteroids are going around the sun, and we have to look at them for a long time to have any definition of what they're doing. So that's going to be hard. But he wants us to do that by 2025. And then by 2030, he wants us to send humans to Mars. Not necessarily to land the first time, but at least to orbit the planet. So that's the speech, and that's where we're going. I've talked a little bit about restructuring Orion, and let me just cover a couple other things, and then I'll open it for questions. Heavy lift launch vehicles. The question for me, and I think it's a question for the nation, is what should we use for first stage lift in a heavy lift launch vehicle? Bear with me, some of you. I see some of you. I don't want you to go away, okay? We have solids and we have liquids. The shuttle uses huge solid rocket boosters. We generate 6 million pounds of thrust from just the 2 solid rocket boosters. We have been asked to go off and develop a liquid engine that can generate 1 million pounds of thrust. Well, you know, the question I ask is, I can already generate 3 million, you know, with one rocket. So what's the thing here? Why do I need to go and look at a liquid rocket? Well, I'm going to do that. And it may turn out that when you weigh the pros and cons of liquids versus solids, we decide that, okay, liquids is the right way to go because we want to build a rocket that can serve DOD, the Department of Defense, the intelligence community, and NASA. And commercial, if they ever decide that they want to go beyond low Earth orbit, which they will one of these days, because commercial entities will want to launch something into geosynchronous orbit so they can make money. Okay? And they already do it, but they will want to do it with a little bit more vigor. So that's why we're looking at, okay, what type of propulsion should we use in the heavy lift launch vehicle? So enough about that. Assistance to the state of Florida. Money. There are a lot of people, not just in the state of Florida, Houston, Utah, in and around Huntsville, Alabama, people around the country who are going to be out of work as a result of what we're doing, and we started 6 years ago. And with the phase out of the shuttle, it's been very smooth. The transition plan for phasing the shuttle out was incredibly well developed, and that's gone very, very smoothly. It is a real perturbation, though, to say you're going to terminate a program like Constellation, where we were going to take some of the people from shuttle and put them there. Not all of them, but some of them. So that exacerbates your jobs outlook, if you will. So we are going to take $40 million, and we're going to put it into Central Florida. And I am co-chairing a task force with the Secretary of Commerce to come up with a plan for how we retrain the workforce at the Kennedy Space Center and the space workforce there. I have encouraged us to also take a look at the rest of the nation, because we know there are going to be big job losses in Utah. We know there are going to be job losses here in Texas. And I would like to see us take a little bit more money. If we're going to take $40 million and put it in Central Florida, let's just take a little bit more, and so we can take care of people across the country. Now, why do we do this? Norm Augustine will tell you, when and he's true, it's harsh, but it's true. When the aerospace industry started going down, we lost 600,000 jobs. But that was just something that nobody was passionate about, so it kind of went and went. But still, we've got to take care of our people. So we're trying to come up with a good plan to transition the folk who work at the Kennedy Space Center. We have decided on programs that will come out of the 2011 budget, and I'm not going to go through those for you, but they're things like flagship demonstrations, like robotic precursor missions that are missions that we're going to be able to fly with some regularity, because I can tell you one thing. If we're not flying something every year, if we're not launching something every year to capture the imagination of the American public, we will go away. You cannot wait until you're ready to fly humans again on whatever it is you're going to fly. I mean, we would have been there with Constellation. We will be there with commercial. We could not get, that's a gap we created, and we just don't know how to overcome. So anybody who tells you that they can fly people quicker in either category, I don't think they're right. I think we're probably 5 years away from being able to launch humans into space once we phase out the shuttle program, and so we can have that discussion when we get to the question and answer real quick. Okay. But we have assigned various what we call host centers to take these new programs. Mike Coates, the other center directors, all of the associate administrators, my senior leadership team is going to get together on the 3rd and 4th of June, and we're going to say, okay, this is what we told the president and the country we were going to do. Is this right? Because we did this pretty quickly. And so we're going to go back and take one last look at what we think these programs are that will be supported by the 2011 budget. And then if we agree that these are, in fact, the right programs, we're going to look at the host centers that we assign, and we're going to say, hey, are those right? Did we get it right, or was somebody thinking about politics or something like that? Because Mike will tell you, I keep trying to tell people, forget the politics. Let me worry about that. I want you to tell me what's technically correct, and then I'll go worry about the politics. So I want to make sure that we didn't, in our haste, do something for political reasons that's really dumb. And then once we come to agreement on that among the senior leadership team, then we can start assigning projects, and that's where the money is determined. And that's what congressmen want to know, congressmen and women. They want to know, okay, what's coming to my congressional district? Mike can't tell anybody here in Texas until we tell him which projects are going to be in the programs that he's going to be hosting. So that's that. Why don't I take questions? Is that okay? Okay, yeah. And I didn't cover everything, but if the questions lag, then I'll cover one or two others. I didn't talk about 21st century launch complex and all that kind of stuff. Leroy.
Hey, Charlie, I just was curious if you could shed some light on a question. We on the Augustine Committee unanimously came up with that we should not be investing any U.S. resources on developing a new hydrocarbon engine, but that's explicitly something that's called out in the new plan. And I was just wondering where that came from, because our rationale was that, hey, we as a nation developed these cryogenic engines, and other nations are trying to develop cryogenic engines, and if we want a hydrocarbon engine, let's just buy them from an ergomash. And so I was just wondering, was there another requirement from outside the agency, or was it a political, something to do with politics? I was just wondering where the rationale came for specifically calling for a hydrocarbon engine development.
You know, Leroy, I have asked that question, to be quite honest, and it's, I think people looked at what was out there and the fact that we have been trying to develop an American version of the RD-180. For those of you who are, the RD-180 is a big engine that the Russians built, big engine, really good. And we use it on the Atlas today. But Congress has said you can only buy X number of RD-180s, and then you've got to produce them here domestically. And so we have been trying to do that for almost 10 years now, I think. And so what we have been asked to do is, okay, we kind of floundered around with industry trying to do this and other people trying to do it. NASA, you go develop this LOX RP engine, kerosene. And so we are going to look at that, but that goes back to the question that I said I am asking now. Is that the right thing to do? Is it right to... There is no one else in the world who builds large, segmented, solid rocket motors. Nobody else knows how to do it. We do. But that's not a good reason to do it if it's not economical. You got to go back to what I said in the very beginning. These are really tough economic times, and we're going to be in these tough economic times for some time to come. NASA was the only, well, I want to say that. We were one of the few federal agencies that got a plus up in our budget in the president's proposal. And it was significant. A $6 billion plus up is not bad. Next year, I think, 2012, 2013, 2014 are going to be grim. I think they're going to be grim. And so what I tell everybody on the Hill when I go is, please help me get this budget passed as close to its form as you can, because I need to get things started, because what we don't start this coming year is going to be really, really tough. And it's going to be grim because fiscal reality will finally set in for everybody. And everybody will realize that, okay, just like you do with your checkbook, we can't continue to live like this. And so it's going to get tough. But I want to know whether we should really chase the guys who really make good hydrocarbon engines, or whether we should say, let's buy them from them. So I don't have an answer for you as to why we got there. Yeah.
Charlie?
Yes.
Didn't want to disappoint you. I might mention that the F1 engine that we flew about 45 years ago had about 1.5 million pounds of thrust.
Exactly.
But it looks to me like one of the kind of universal losses that we've got for the next several years is down mass capability. The last couple of days we've been talking about utilizing, finally, to its fullest, the International Space Station, a laboratory in space. And a whole lot of proposed experiments are handicapped when there's no down mass, really no down mass capability. Is anybody looking at that as a unique kind of problem, separate problem?
Walt, they are, actually. And we gave $50 million grants to 5 different companies some time ago in a program called Commercial Cargo Development, CCDev. And I think it's Sierra Nevada. Is that right, Mike? Sierra Nevada took an offshoot of, I think it's actually the HL-20 that was developed by Langley, and it was one of the many NASA programs or projects that when the administration changes, it gets canceled or it goes away. And Sierra Nevada looked at the HL-20 and said, man, it's a wing vehicle. And so they are working on trying to develop the HL-20 as a potential vehicle that will be used for commercial cargo to and from space. That would give us a much better down mass capability than anything that's currently on the drawing boards. Much better than a Dragon or a Cygnus that Orbital is producing. I don't know whether that answered the question. So we are very concerned about it, but there are some people on the horizon. There's another vehicle that Boeing worked they're working that they actually it's a NASA project that we canceled, and they decided they would take it and try to make it commercial. So we're looking at that. Yes.
Charlie?
Yes.
Back here.
Yes.
Back here.
I'm sorry, Leah.
I think, Charlie, one thing we can all agree on, regardless of how we feel about Constellation, is to be in favor of what you said about supporting graduate students. There is a generation younger even than we are to come in, and we don't have the funds to support them all now. But one of the things that's needed to attract them is the vision that there's going to be major, exciting space activities that they'll move into. I know you've spoken about that. Would you comment on what you think is going to be the attractor for these guys?
Larry, I think, and you and I have talked about this, kids today are different. Any of you who are in academics know this. They are different than any of us sitting around these tables. You cannot sit them in a classroom, and go through a textbook and stuff and expect that they're going to hang with you. They have got to be engaged electronically. We have got to use technology to reach them. And interestingly, any of the more recent astronauts than me, Barbara, Leroy, any of them will tell you, when Mike and I went in the classroom and asked a class how many of them wanted to be astronauts when we first came down, there was not a single hand in the class that didn't go up. You go into a classroom today and you ask that question and you may get 2 or 3 hands. And it's because, as somebody said on one of the panels, we have convinced them or allowed them to be convinced that there are other avenues that are much more lucrative, business, law, et cetera, et cetera. They're finding that may not be true. But we have got to help them. When we talk about asteroids, kids get excited. Not just college kids who want to go study, but anybody younger than 20 gets excited when you start talking about chasing an asteroid or going to try to find an asteroid. And just the thought of being on a mission, flying to an asteroid gets some of them excited. As I said, though, the only way we're going to capture them, Larry, is if we are doing something every year or every 2 years at the worst, which means we've got to be launching a science mission, a robotic precursor mission, a technology development mission, one of these flagship demos. And the only way we can do that is if the budget that I'm given comes out pretty close to what the president and I worked out and what we propose. Because if we decide that, okay, we don't care what anybody says, we're going to go ahead and we're going to build Constellation or something like it, that's all we have money for. And it's economics. It is not, as I've tried to tell all my friends when I go to the Johnson Space Center, this is not anything about quality. It's not anything about technical competence. It's not anything about the technical readiness or capability of a vehicle. I don't have any question, and most people who are knowledgeable have no questions about the technical merits of an Ares 5 or an Ares 1 or whatever else it is. But in today's environment, you can't do everything. And so the best way to try to free us up to do the things that are going to allow us to go into the future and do what these young kids want to do and is going to excite them is by helping the commercial guys develop to the point where we're satisfied that they can service low Earth orbit and we can go to deep space. If we can't do that, we're never going to leave low Earth orbit. I believe, my belief. And if we don't do it this time, then the people sitting in this room will not see it. Now, I honestly believe that. This is something that is really important for our generation to leave to the next generation. If we don't do this, if we don't have the courage to do this, Israel Galvan, hold up your phone.
Charlie.
Wait up, just hold up your cell phone. Israel, you're going to ask a question. Hold up your cell phone. He lost it. Israel has an iPhone. And Israel will tell you, if somebody hadn't had the courage to put the doggone dial phone down, you know, and say, we're going to go with these little bitty things like this that they'll never work. You know, we'd all be walking around. You remember when the cell phones, mobile phones, when the mobile phones were like this? It is a chance, it is a risk, yes, but we have to take it. We have to be brave enough to take that risk. And I think we can do it. And the thing I tell everybody in the international community, I tell my American friends, since this is an international audience, for my American friends, is there any reason that any of you think that we can't commercially build a rocket that is at least as good as a Soyuz? That's for the American folks sitting in here, okay? I already said I think Soyuz is incredible. But it has been around for a long, long time. It has been incrementally improved, just like we do solid rocket boosters in the shuttle program. I mean, the reason solid rocket boosters are so good is because we don't change them unless we need to. We do continuous process improvement. And the Russians with Soyuz have done continuous process improvement from the very beginning. I happen to be, as an American, I happen to believe that we have little companies, big companies, middle companies who can do that. And I have to have faith that we can facilitate that. I think we can. And if there are others in here who don't think we can do it, and if you think, you know, that, oh, but it's going to take them 6 years from now. Well, yeah. We don't know. I don't really know how long. If somebody gave me all the money in the world and told me to go, you know, put a human on Aries, I think I can do it by 2015. I think. Can I? I think. But I don't know that, because what I don't know is what I don't know. And we have never had a development program, never, that has gone, that I know of. Let me, don't ever say never. Walt's going to tell me, yes, there was. But to my knowledge, I'm not familiar with one that has gone flawlessly and, you know, it's come out. And of late, we just have not had any luck in delivering anything on time. So yes, the commercial guys are going to have problems, and they're going to be late because they're the guys that build everything. So why would they, I mean, you know, when they built the Joint Strike Fighter, the F-35, they're late, they're overcost, they're overweight. So why would I expect that they're going to build a rocket ship and it's going to be any different? It's the same companies. So, I mean, I just ask you to calm down a little bit, you know, and just kind of look at reality, and then look at where we think we want to be as a nation and as a space community. I listened to you all today, and I believe what you said, and there is a way to do the things that you said you want to do, but we've got to try something new in order to get there. Otherwise, we're not going to get there. Maybe one more question, because I'm hungry. Yes, since Israel's been holding that mic.
I have one question, and in fact, I think it's appropriate for this forum here, because it's an international forum. Now, George Abbey is a good friend of mine. Tom Stafford's a good friend of mine. Now, I'm an old Cold Warrior. I came out of the Fleet Ballistic Missile Submarine Program. My job was to utterly destroy the Soviet Union. Not kill tens of thousands, but millions of people. So, you know, I have a little getting used to it with the kinds of relationship that George and Tom Stafford have with the Russians. Mm-hmm. But so the question to you is really somewhat philosophical. One of the things that surprises me more than anything else is the arguments that are being used nowadays, even by friends of mine in the Congress and in my community. They're using Cold War rhetoric to justify manned space flight program. Mm-hmm. For God's sake, the Cold War's over. Give me a break. You know, we have Russian friends around here. If that's the only justification we have for the manned space program is Cold War rhetoric, then we ought to shut it down.
Israel, I agree with you. And going back to Tom's question, to Larry's question, kids don't buy it. What kids do buy is that they want to do exciting things, and they want to do different things, and they they want to be able to, a lot of us who were around during the Apollo era, some of us say, why, okay, we've been to the moon, so why do you need to go back to the moon? Well, kids say, but I haven't been there. I didn't even see it. So why can't I go, if only to do a touch and go on the way to Mars? And people will make a big deal of the fact that the president in Florida said, why do we need to go back to the moon? Well, he did say that. But you've got to understand what he was saying. We don't have to be first back because we have been first. Now, we do have to go back, I think. Now, and there will be some of you in the audience here who will disagree with me on that. Some people will say there is no technical reason to go back to the moon. I just think when you're going to go, a place where it's going to take you 3 years to go and come back, we probably ought to make sure we got our act together before we go launching off. If something happens on the way to the moon, Apollo 13 showed that if we're lucky, we can zip around and we can be back home. If you're on your way to Mars and something goes wrong, then, that's it.
Charlie?
Yes.
Leon Alkali from JPL.
Yes.
A quick comment. I just want to share perhaps an idea with you that can help maybe excite the younger generations more and the public. In designing and working on lunar robotic missions, I found a lot of inspiration in the missions from the 60s. The Rangers, the Surveyors, one of my favorite programs, the Surveyors, the Lunar Orbiters, and so on. And if you look at the missions at that time, all pre-Apollo missions, we were launching multiple missions a year. Not once a year, multiple missions a year. We'll launch in October, in January, and in May, and so on. And I'm still impressed. I mean, how did we manage to do that? Multiple launches a year because we were focused on a specific goal and so on. So I'd like to suggest that as you formulate the precursor robotic program or other elements, that there are ways, innovative ways, to structure a program that will have multiple launches a year, not necessarily one or two or one every 2 years, as you said, but on the other end, multiple launches a year will clearly capture, I think, the younger generation's imagination. It will be more exciting for the public. There may be some failures, like we've had on Ranger and Surveyor, but I think that will be a change from where we are today, and I think it will be very exciting.
I think you're right, and what I did not include when I talked about at least one a year or one every 2 years, I didn't include any of the suborbital flights. When you add in the suborbital flights, which are just those we launch out of Vandenberg, Mojave, Wallops, any of these places, that's incredible. Because some college student or some graduate student or some doctoral candidate is getting data that's going to allow them to put their sheepskin up. And that graduate student or that doctoral student is going to have an undergrad who is going to be allowed to study with him or her as an undergraduate assistant, and that's going to really light their fire, I tell you. I just came from MIT last week, and watching undergraduates who have been allowed to work with the doctoral candidates in the Department of Aero, working on these things called spheres, little balls that I didn't realize this. I'm the NASA administrator, so why should I know? But we've got 3 of them that are flying around inside the space station. And they've been flying around for 4 years, I think. First one went up in 2006. And these are little spheres about this big around, and they station keep on each other. You know what station keeping means? One of them is the reference, and there's sensors, in around the module, and one sphere knows where it is inside the module so it doesn't bounce into the wall and stuff. And these other 2 guys are, okay, I want to make a diamond. So they make a diamond like the Blue Angels. And then it says, okay, we want to get in line. So they go, get in line. And the Massachusetts Space Grant Consortium, as a part of the Summer of Innovation that I talked about earlier today, this summer is going to allow middle school kids to write programs that are going to be moving these spheres around inside the International Space Station. Can you imagine that if you were, when you were growing up as a 7th grader, writing a program for something that's going to be flying around inside a space station? I can't. And so you're absolutely right, and we can do that a lot. And this is the last question. And then I'll come and answer your question, okay? I promise. Because I am hungry.
Thank you for taking this question. This is from an international perspective. Do you think the international community has a role to play in this period of uncertainty?
The international community has gotten us to the point where we are still surviving in this period of uncertainty. You can ask Leroy Chow. When the Augustine Committee convened, the unanimous vote I have heard, of everyone on Augustine was get rid of station. Get rid of the International Space Station. Because the international partners, some came in person, but every single one communicated with the Augustine Committee independently and said, whatever you do, we have to preserve the International Space Station. I mean, that investment is so valuable to the world, to the community of explorers, that you cannot let it go. And Augustine, everybody on the committee was turned around. And so that's why we're having this conversation tonight. Had it not been for the international community, I'm not sure what we'd be talking about tonight, to be quite honest. And they have a vital role to play. They are going to be in the critical path, not only because the president says they are, but because I have always felt that they should be. Ever since George Abbey sent me back to Houston from the job that I just loved at NASA headquarters, and made me go fly another shuttle mission, I have realized the value of international cooperation. I was like, and Vladimir will tell you, Volodya will tell you, when we had dinner the first night, it was like, it was probably like ice water or something, because he's a cold warrior, I was a cold warrior, and I didn't want to have anything to do with these guys. You got the wrong guy talking about go command this mission with Russians on it. And George said, calm down. And I met Vladimir Titov and Sergei Krikalev, and then our families came together, and it has become an incredible friendship that is among the best things I've ever had. And the value of that, the value of that was not lost on the Russian Deputy Prime Minister, Sergei Ivanov. After he watched the shuttle launch last week, he spoke afterwards to a group. He said, I've been watching this stuff for a couple of days now. He said, there is something that you have in the space program that comes from personal relations over time. Because he had heard Sergei and me talk about, training together and getting to know each other and watching our kids grow up and all that kind of stuff. He said, if we could just get our governments to realize that that's the way we need to operate with everything, we'd be a lot better off. What you all have done over time is incredible. Remember where you started in this community, in the space biomedical community. You started when two countries would not speak to each other. And I'm not sure how you all did it, but you snuck off somewhere and you started talking to each other. And from that, we have come to where we are today. So I thank you very much for all you've done and for all you'll continue to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charlie, for the time and for the patience and the openness as well in responding to everybody's questions. I'm sure you've allayed a lot of concerns, and as always, as a leader, you instill confidence in what you've had to say. Thank you very much.